Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider, a priest of the Legionaries of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarQuest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we are on day 151 and we're covering Perfecta Caritatis 13 on the vow of poverty, right? We had chastity yesterday. We'll have obedience tomorrow with 3 vows, right? Yesterday we talked about the vow of chastity reminds all Christians of heaven and frees us religious to work, but also has practical aspects. Today we're going to talk about poverty and how it's essential to religious life. We should really live poorly, and we should live it communally, not just individually. Let's get into it. So paragraph 13 has 6 subparagraphs. We're going to read it in several groups, but let's read the summary of each paragraph. So 13a just says, hey, it's essential to religious life to live poverty. 13b, to be really poor, not just kind of live obedience and, you know, and kind of be poor. C, religious need to work, not just slack. There's a universal law of work in religious life. D is a brief thing on inheritances. And E and F talks about common poverty, not just individual, the whole community, and how we share goods, but then we use them poorly. That doesn't sound right. We use them in the sense of poverty. We don't use them poorly in the sense of we destroy them and we used the car poorly. We just ran it off a cliff and we didn't change oil. And no. We take care of things so that they're, poverty, so that my car can hit, 150, 200,000 miles or something. That's my goal, right? My goal isn't just get a new car. No, my goal is hopefully 200,000, but I don't know if the car will reach that. That's a good goal for a car today, right? That's 300,000 kilometers for those of you who'd use metric, or thereabouts, close enough. Anyway, so let's read paragraphs A and B. 13a. Religious should diligently practice, and if need be expressed and also in new forms, that voluntary poverty which is recognized and highly esteemed, especially today, as an expression of following of Christ. By it they share in the poverty of Christ, who for our sakes became poor, even though he is rich, so that by his poverty we might become rich. Confer 2 Corinthians 8 and Matthew 8. B. With regard to the religious poverty, it is not enough to use goods in a way subject to the Spirit's will, but members must be poor both in fact and in spirit, their treasure being in heaven. Confer Matthew 6. Right, so that starts off with a very important thing. Poverty is essential to religious life. Voluntary poverty, right? I voluntarily renounce my, getting things up. For me, it's very concrete because I had a job. I didn't have a job. I was doing a degree in electrical and computer engineering where I'd easily be making 6 figures now, well into the 6 figures if I had not renounced that and gone into religious life, right? And I don't make any money for myself now, even if I make a job where they pay something akin to a salary, it's made by my community, not by me. We'll get into that in the last part today. And then it notes it can take on new forms. It doesn't really explain what these new forms are, but obviously there is the idea of what is poor today versus what was poor, 50 years ago. Things change, right? For example, I have a cell phone, right? Almost everybody in my congregation, all the priests at least, have cell phones. When I was a kid, cell phones were something super rich, right? But today it's like to secure our email, we need 2-factor authentication. We need a cell phone to communicate with people. We all use WhatsApp and things like that. And so it becomes kind of essential. And then why do we have poverty? Because it comes from Christ. It's sharing his poverty. He makes people rich through his poverty. That's the kind of poverty we need to have as religious. And here, not just the banks appearing and losing goods, but actual poverty, right? Oftentimes, communities will have foundations, have donations, and so we can get lax. We can live comfortably in many cases. But what is real poverty? How do we live real poverty, right? In theory, oh yeah, we have enough money in the bank account, I can afford this nice meal out or something, right? But is that really poverty? I mean, technically my superior approved it. No, poverty is living in a sense of that true lack of material things, that true poverty, right? So even things like, hey, I'm driving from A to B and just logistically it's easier to stop. Like maybe I take a sandwich or maybe I stop at the very low end restaurant rather than the nice restaurant, right? because poverty, that's important. Not just being like, oh, technically I obeyed the poverty, but did I really do it in spirit? No, a lot of people don't. It's really a shame that certain religions have kind of this, fancy schmancy stuff that you don't need, right? Certain things you need today, right? I'm recording this on a laptop. I have a cell phone here sitting on my desk. I'm obviously have this, I have a very simple recording setup. It's basically like a microphone and a little holder so that it can attach to my desk and I can swing it out like a desk lamp. But that's it. Like I intentionally don't have a ton of stuff, right? I do have a ton of books, actually. That's one of the things about being a theology professor as a religious. But anyway, so let's move on to C and D about religious need to work, not slack. And then D is a brief thing about inheritances. C, religious who consider themselves and their own assignments to be bound by the common law of labor. And while they procure what is required for their sustenance and works, they should banish all undue solicitude and trust themselves to provident care of their Father in heaven. See Matthew 6. D. Religious congregations, by their constitutions, can permit their members to renounce inheritances, both which have been acquired or that may be acquired. Right? So that latter one is right. The idea to renounce inheritance. It is not that you have to renounce inheritances. Poverty in the vow is only strictly that we don't manage any money, not that we don't have any, and that any money we get through our works, through our ministry, comes to the community. And a concrete thing, so I got a moderate inheritance from my grandfather, right? Like, my sister used hers for part of a down payment on her house. It wasn't even a full down payment on her house, and she doesn't have a super nice house, right? To give you a perspective. It's, it's not nothing, but it's not like, a huge inheritance. And it's in a bank account that my mom manages. I don't touch it. I don't manage it. And if I die, it's donated to my community. But it's still there, right? And also there's a rule because to make sure that communities don't push guys through who are rich but don't really have a vocation, that until if I was to head over to a community manage, they couldn't really do anything other than manage it until I died. They could take theoretically for some of the interest, but they couldn't take the principal of what I donated. And if I left and I asked for it, they would have to give it to me. I have no intention of leaving. I'm just telling you what the canon law is here, in that sense, right? That's just the thing. So it's important to note those aspects. And then going back to C, we're bound by common labor, right? We need to work for the kingdom. We need to build this. We need to do our ministry, our prayer, whatever our community is dedicated to. We need to do work to help clean up our house, to help make the meals and things like that. Obviously, contemplative communities do more of that. But I think even in the most active communities, it's good for us religious to have to do some of the work to clean up our house, right? In my own community, I don't know if it's technically in the Constitution or it's just an applied rule that basically, if you're healthy enough to do apostolate, you're healthy enough to keep your own room clean, at the very least, right? And then obviously we have to help. We have to help with laundry. We have to help with cooking, things like that, right? Right after I record this, I'm going to go and cook dinner for the community, for example, right? And so that is where we are, right? That is a thing that we need to have, that idea of really working and not just kind of like, oh yeah, lazy. I'm a religious, made my final vows. They can't kick me out. I'm just going to be like, lying on a beach. That's the antithesis of what a religious should be, right? We should be the most dedicated, most ornerous, most hardworking people around. Why? Because we have that vow of poverty. And living poverty means that we don't have that money, but we still work harder than we work for money because we're working for Jesus. So anyways, paragraphs E and F are about common poverty, not just individual poverty. So it's more about the things of the religious community. I'm going to read them, then I'm going to analyze them. I'm going to start with F in the analysis because F gives a kind of principle that then helps with E. At least I think so. So let's read it. E. Due regard being had for local customs, religious communities should readily offer a quasi-collective witness to poverty and gladly use their own goods for other needs of the church and the support of the poor, whom all religious should love after the example of Christ. See Matthew 19, 20 and 25, James 2, and 1 John 3. The several provinces housed of each community should share their temporal goods with one another, so that those who have more help the others who are in need. F. Religious communities have the right to possess whatever is required for the temporal life and work, unless this is forbidden by the rules and constitutions. Nevertheless, they should avoid every appearance of luxury, excessive wealth, or accumulation of goods. So a quick terminology here, they talked about provinces here, like the several provinces, how they help houses or individual houses. Like, for example, in the Legion, we have houses in D.C. and in Philadelphia and in Detroit and in near Toronto and things like that. But then we have one province for all of Canada and the U.S. and also Korea and the Philippines. We have one house in each of those. I don't know why they're fit. They're put with us in North America. I'm not, and things like that. So those provinces are are kind of like dioceses in a way. They're usually bigger, but they're more based on members than on geography per se, right? For example, the Dominicans, who have more members in North America than we do, for Canada and the U.S., they have 3 provinces in the U.S. and 1 in Canada, right? And things like that, right? So those kind of things happen. But anyways, moving on to F and talking about religious share money and communal fund, right? I get paid by the seminary where I'm teaching, and that I never see that money. That money goes straight into my community account, right? And they're able to possess things as common property, right? For example, my community, we own the house that the house generally own the house we live in. Some of the houses that are new or are in certain places, they might be renting, but many of the houses we own. And we also own apostolates, right? We might own a school, another community might own a hospital, things like that, right? And we can own things like clothes, car, like this laptop is owned by my community. It's the laptop I use, but it's owned by my community, right? The laptop I'm recording this podcast on, right? And then we need to not be luxurious with it, right? We need to have simple food. We need to have simple clothes. We shouldn't be like the ones getting all the super fancy things, or it shouldn't be like the gold-plated bed frame or something like that. No, simple in how we live that, right? And then as a community, we should share that idea of poverty, right? Using it poverty community, donating to the church, donating to the needs of the poor, things like that. One of the things that's very interesting in kind of this regard is if you go to the basement of the Basilica of Immaculate Conception in D.C., they have all these different bricks from all these different donors. People go out and find, there's a few famous people, like I think Babe Ruth gave one of them, so they'll find the Babe Ruth brick and things like that. But there's a ton of those are the sisters of this, the brothers of this, the priest, this religious community, that religious community. And they're doing to help build this great church to the Immaculate Conception for the praise of our Blessed Mother, right? And so that's the needs of the church, right? Also, like the needs in more poverty thing, like, hey, we need help in our missions here, things like that as well. And the poor here, in whatever city you're in. And then we talked about that with regard to provinces, right? Donating to other provinces, same community, because obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but in some regard, the Canadian province and the American province probably get more money in than the Indonesian province, which is a missionary province, or things like that, right? For a lot of communities. So things like that go on. So thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast. You can donate to help StarQuest produce it. Another great podcast at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time, monthly, or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow, we're going to continue with the next paragraph of Prophetic Care Tactics 14 on the vow of obedience, finishing the 3 in a row here. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information on the podcast, such as playlists for individual documents and a reading plan. Amen.